Good afternoon. We will get started in just a few moments. Welcome to the third installment of the Faces of Agriculture and USDA Speaker Series, hosted by the USDA Office of Partnerships and Public Engagement. The purpose of this speaker series is to connect students with the current USDA STEM-related program managers, including researchers, scientists, and foresters, to learn about their story, career path, and exciting projects and initiatives that they may be working on at USDA that serve the public interest while helping to inspire the next generation of the agricultural workforce. This event will be recorded, and a copy of the recording will be available to participants by the end of the week. We welcome and encourage questions for our speakers. If you have any questions for our speakers, please place your question in the Q&A box and we will address all questions at the end of each speaker. I want to take a moment to thank our speakers and our participants for taking time out of their busy schedules to learn and grow as a community. Without further delay, I will introduce our first speaker. Mark Bills works as an investigator for the USDA Animal Plant Health Inspection Service, Investigative and Enforcement Services, IES, South Central area along the southern border, covering the area from Brownsville, Texas to Laredo, Texas. Mark was born and raised in McAllen, Texas, and attended the University of Texas Pan American, where he majored in business marketing. While attending UTPA, he was a student athlete for the men's basketball team from 1999 to 2001, and then went on to join the Reserve Officers Training Corps. In 2006, Mark transitioned from the U.S. Army Reserve component into U.S. Army Active Component as an Air Defense Artillery Officer, where he served in leadership positions as a platoon leader, executive officer, battery commander, aide-de-camp, one-star general, and chief air defense in Fort Hood, Texas. In 2013, Mark received a Master of Arts in Leadership Studies from the University of Texas at El Paso, and in 2014, he was medically retired as a captain from the U.S. Army. In 2015, the Office of Personnel Management selected Mark as a Presidential Management Fellow, which is the flagship leadership program for the U.S. government. Mark started his civilian career in the government working for the Department of Housing and Urban Development, Public and Indian Housing as a portfolio management specialist located in Fort Worth, Texas. The USDA hired Mark in August 2016, and he moved back with his family to the Rio Grande Valley a few months later. As a Hispanic and product of the RGV, Mark's roots run all over the area, so he personally feels a tie and a responsibility to those around him. I'd like to introduce Mark Bills.
Hey, Ruby, this is Mark. Do you hear me fine?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Do you all hear any feedback right now?
No feedback. You're good to go.
Because I can hear everything you said on that delay. But okay, everybody. Hi, my name is Mark Bills. Thanks for the introduction, Ruby. It was great. I just want to say first and foremost that It's an honor and privilege to be speaking to y'all. Thanks for having me. Okay, cool. All right, so let's get into it. Ruby said pretty much gave everything on my background. So I'm going to go straight into it and just let you know what I do as an investigator. So as an investigator working down in South Texas, we as investigators, we plan, coordinate, and conduct complex investigations and other projects of extreme complexity and/or sensitivity concerning violations of federal laws and regulations governing the international and interstate movement of livestock, poultry, and agricultural products, the manufacture and distribution of veterinary biologics, the regulation of genetically engineered products, and the humane treatment of animals. We also plan and execute witness interviews and elicit information from individuals, including those that are hostile. We compose, develop, and administer affidavits. We develop investigative subpoena requests and draft subpoenas when protection officials and various entities of the regulated industries require them. We provide critical reviews and feedback on internal policies, procedures, and guidance. We provide technical guidance to CBP officials and APHIS, Animal and Plant Health Inspection Services, program officials on regulatory interpretation and proper methods of preserving and handling material evidence. We deliver training to APHIS and other programs. We conduct complex and/or politically sensitive investigations at the request of regional or assistant regional director or field supervisor. We update and maintain information on the IAS information system to provide accurate and timely information concerning IAS investigations. We conduct thorough and comprehensive investigations while managing a large caseload, additional assignments, and/or other responsibilities. We skillfully respond to changing priorities, scope, and complexity of investigative work while maintaining the quality of our work. We compile large amounts of information and present this information using tables, spreadsheets, and charts in investigative reports. We coordinate multi-jurisdictional investigations involving various regulatory entities and witnesses in multiple states. So that's pretty much a snapshot of what we do. Now, I'm just going to go into just some things that I myself have learned along the way, things that I've taken in. I think that some things that I wish that I would have known back as I was growing up, probably like your age. But when you're in school, you're there, your mind is, it could be in multiple places. It could be there strictly focused on schoolwork, and you could have other outside things, organizations, your friends, just a lot of other things, maybe even just socializing. Yet I could say for right now, just having this opportunity to speak with you all, I mean, I give you all a lot of credit because I know I wasn't there in doing these kind of things in the summertime or just a part of just anything but other than school. And I gotta say that that's a lot about you as an individual, because there's a lot of people that don't do this kind of stuff. So I would say take advantage of these opportunities when you get the chance. If you can be a part of an organization, take it. Because right now, this is when you all are creating that platform. You don't wait till later on in life, or you're looking back and I wish I would have done this, because that could be too late, or you could find yourself stuck in a situation. But as I think about it, and going from position as a military officer and then transitioning into the federal government, I had, like Ruby had mentioned, I had the opportunity to be selected as a presidential management fellow through the Office of Personnel Management, and that happened just by coincidence. I was transitioning out of the military back in 2014, and I came across a guy, a gentleman out of Temple, Texas, and he was working for the VA, and he had told me, he said, "Yeah, Mark, what you do have a master's?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, you know what? I think you'd be a great candidate for this program." So, and then I said, "Well, you know what? when it comes out, when the information comes out, if you can, please let me know. Keep me informed, and I'll definitely I'll apply. Well, not knowing anything really about the program, I then researched it and found out, what, it's a pretty legit program. So then, I put in my stuff, and soon after that, I was selected. And for myself, this is where I could say, like my background in the military, sometimes you don't know when it's going to take effect. And for you all, maybe one of y'all will go in the military, maybe none of y'all go in the military. But I can say the military was for one, honestly, served, especially during the time that I came in. But being in the military, it gave me something that's called veteran preference. So that's when during this whole application process, I could say that my peers whom I was going up against, or these other candidates, a lot of them were all like Ivy League. They all graduated from Ivy League schools. A good majority of them were very prestigious schools. Myself, at the time, I didn't. It was a public school. But it wasn't. It was UTEP, University of Texas El Paso, and it just wasn't. I didn't feel like I was kind of on the same platform. But it's funny because when you're put in situations like during the interview process, I know that I was able to relate a lot of things to my managerial experience from being a battery commander and those other positions. So I was able to relate very easily and quickly. But having that veteran preference got me to that stage. And that's how then I was able to get into the federal government, because that was my way in. So Ruby had mentioned that I came in and I worked for the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And for them, I was a portfolio management specialist. So as a portfolio management specialist, we had housing authorities under us. We managed them. And my job also was then to shadow the regional director. So this, like we mentioned, this is a flagship program for the government as far as they're trying to groom individuals into becoming future leaders of the government. So then I did that, and I only did it for 10 months. It was a 2-year program, even as a GS11, pretty good. And then you go into GS13 position, which is then managerial spot, and then it's pretty much you can just accelerate from there. So it's a quick turnaround. It's a very good opportunity. The only reason why I didn't continue on with it was because I was always looking back towards home. First and foremost, I had my church. Second, my mother, she had stage 4 cancer, and she wasn't doing good. And then I had a house down here. So, all these things, was always keeping my eyes set back on South Texas. So then in the summertime, I came across this position as an investigator. And I was like, you know what? I think I qualify for a lot of these things. A lot of the things, the requirements they had, there were things that I did as an additional duty in the military as a 15-6 investigating officer. And what I would do, so handle like either sexual harassment case, or it might be property issue. Command would dictate it. They would bring this on to us, and then we'd go and finish out the investigation. So, but everything that I did during that lined up exactly with what I do. Now, the only difference is this is ag. Department of Agriculture is totally different. And my experience with ag was pretty limited. It was, I've seen the stamp at the grocery stores on the food products and stuff like that, but I really didn't know a lot about it. I grew up fishing, hunting, and all that kind of stuff. I didn't grow up, doing 4-H or FSIS. But just like anything, I think in any organization have subject matter experts. This is what I learned in the military, is that you don't have to be the subject matter expert all the time. You can definitely utilize the resources. So utilize the people around you. It's critical. It also allows the people to be shown what their value is to the organization. It creates that opportunity for empowerment and worth. So it's good. And as long as you utilize those people, you can be fine, and you'll learn along the way. So that's how I got into the government, and I was fortunate to have worked two months up in Fort Worth, and then I was able to transfer down to back to my home duty station. So yeah, that was great. It was a great fit. Great organization. Working for USDA has been just a blessing. I have a great team for the South Central area, and a great just program who I work for. So it's very good. The people I work with, all the programs that we facilitate, we work for what we call as our customers. I have a great relationship as well. So things that like I said along the way that I've come to realize that I think that are important in life. When you look for a position, when you do graduate, think about art, think about what you're doing, because one thing, it's not all about the money. There's lots of times we get this mindset where we want to go and say, and we want to make money. Um, money is not everything. Just remember that. And happiness, I would say, is pretty much is the key to everything. Having that balance in your life will create the journey just so much more, so much better throughout. Having that balance with this job, what I've been fortunate to experience is, although it's a good paying job, but it allows me also to see my son grow up and to be able to spend time with my wife. I have the flexibility to do those kind of things, which if I was to have gone and done other positions, for instance, if I was to have stayed in that program, my time would have been limited to get to do those things. So, that's a big thing. It's not about the money, happiness, find that work-life and balance. It's critical throughout your journey. I would also say be diverse. Diversity is very important, I believe. Stay open to your approach. Stay open to ideas. Don't shut down people. You might think that, your way, it's the right way. Just remember, it's probably not the only. There's a lot of ways to go through, a path. So just remember, you're most likely not the first person to have come across this situation. So you can go ahead and ask around, research, and see if you can avoid a reinventing the wheel. Other things is criticism. There's constructive criticism, critical criticism. I mean, people can take it for what it's worth. No matter what, whomever says it, just listen. Keep your ears open and listen, because sometimes we as individuals might have this belief that we are this person, or we do this certain way and we're good at it. But yet other people are watching us at all times, and other people are looking at you and seeing what you're doing and seeing how you are working and what you're producing. And it's good to know what's the reality, because you don't want having this convoluted belief, and thinking that you are this other person. So it's good to have those. It will define you. It'll sharpen your sword. It's a good thing to have, to just take it for what it's worth. Along the way, I would definitely say having a mentor or a coach throughout your career can help you out substantially, whether it be a leader, peer, somebody inside or outside the organization. Just somebody to talk to and somebody to allow you to see it from a different angle. Because just remember that there's a lot of different lenses out there, and people see things differently. There's you may see it one way, somebody else might see it the other way. It's kind of like that game, the telephone game, when you put stuff, one person's the next person's the next person, the next person, that message, it just slowly, it goes, the whole conversation changes dramatically at the end. So, things can differ. one thing somebody told me, an officer had told me was, have your own tool bag, make it your own. And I was like, what was he talking about? And then he tells me, he's like, okay, look, I carry this tool bag around. I've been going around 20 years already, and I got different tools. I have this, that, this or the other. And whether it be your peers, people you come into contact with, leaders, whatever, you take the good, the bad, the ugly, and you decide on your own what is it that you want in your tool bag, and what is it who you want to become as far as a leader, as a person. So I took that to heart and just tried to make it my own throughout the course. So, another thing, kind of touched on this a little bit, but if you're not where you think you should be, then identify why you're not. Okay, this is kind of going back to having that reflection. If you find yourself like, oh, I graduated from college and I expect to be here. Well, just remember that it's not just having a degree, a bachelor's, that's going to get you to that next step. That's where that whole diversity comes into as well. Separating yourself from the person to the left and the right. And these things, being a part of organizations, having involvement, whether it be community service, whatever, do those kind of things that will separate yourself. Because once you put that stuff on a resume, it's going to allow you the opportunity to talk about it and how you were able to handle yourself in those situations, what you took from it, and how you can better approach certain things. So yeah, but just if you ever wonder, why didn't I get that promotion? Why didn't I get this position? Whatever. Identify the problem. Why is it that you're not there? How do you get there? So, you just got to identify how is it that you're going to get to that point. So how do you do that? You do that several ways. I would definitely identify what you want and set up short-term and long-term goals. Have your immediate target and your long-range target. Another thing, especially for people, especially in college, this is something that my stepdad told me. He said, you know what, Mark, as far as college, it's not difficult to graduate. That's not a big thing. It's just about showing up. And you know what, truthfully, I attest that. For me, college wasn't hard. It was just about showing up. That's one of the biggest things you can do in right now in your current situation. Another thing is when you talk to anybody, first time you ever meet them, be authentic, stay true to yourself. Don't be a fake. Remember your word is gold. So just be true. And this is something that every time I talk to somebody, I believe this is an issue. And you're either good at it or you're not. And communication. So communication is key. Remember this: no person is alike. We can all speak different languages, and we can all interpret things different. So just know that what is coming out is possibly not what is being received. And also, like, share your information. There's nothing wrong with sharing information. Sometimes some people have this mindset to where, if I hold on to this information, I have power. That's not the way it works. It's not doing anything beneficial for your organization. If anything, it's hindering the organization, and it's just some people you're going to come across people that will do that because they feel that it's a way that they can, I guess, protect their job maybe and their validity in the organization. So, and there's got to be a reason why they do that. So yeah, you're going to experience hiccups, speed bumps, failures, whatever you want to call them. These things are going to happen. Like if you even just think about one of the greatest of all time, I believe he's the greatest. Michael Jordan. Many failures, many missed shots, but at the end, he's the greatest basketball player of all time. So there's going to be anytime there's success, there's going to be failures. So just know that it's okay. That's what you need to understand. Like during a storm, there's the waters can be rough, but after that, they're eventually going to calm down. So the question is, how are you going to ride it out? How will you get through that? It's going to be a testament of yourself, showing how your character is, and also possibly expose things, good, bad, whatever, but learn from it. I would say develop a solid base, concrete, root yourself deep, have that in your, because without that, you can tumble to the left and right very easily. Another thing is, I would say just be prepared. That's the motto of the Boy Scouts. I was a Boy Scout growing up, so it sunk with me deeply. But just be prepared. Again, that's separating yourself, being part of organizations, internships, volunteer work, your resume. One thing that some people do is they might have a 30-second or 1-minute elevator pitch. That's just where you can pretty much in a small amount of time, you then go and just spit out who you are in 30 seconds, because that's all the time you might have. And that opportunity, when the door opens, you seize that opportunity. So practice that. Think about things that are going to highlight you as an individual. Then we got, I would say it's one of the things that we did in the Army so regularly was train. You set yourself up for success. So take that, do that, you'll be straight. Stay up to date with the times in your profession and in the world. That's going to be critical. Staying situationally aware, and also do not become. A lot of people can find themselves going through that tunnel and going, just okay, I'm here. I've been here for 15 years, whatever the case may be, and it's settle, and it doesn't do anything for you as far as growth. And before you react, also process the information. Some things that you can be instinctive about, but other things, just process them before you let it come out of your mouth, because sometimes the tongue can be sharp. Treat others the way you like to be treated. Like they say, love your neighbor. Be respectful. See how you can be of service to them. It's going to get you home. Effectively communicate by knowing your audience. Knowing your audience is critical. Be a team player, and with having one unified goal. Being a team player, you're going to be doing stuff individually, but also you can be in teams at times, and how you are able to work as a unit shows a lot. Just remember this: your job does not define who you are. And I could say this, like currently right now, what are we experiencing? We're experiencing the highest unemployment. So with that being said, there's a lot of people out there that are losing their jobs. These jobs, for some, this could have been their job. This could have been the thing that they believed that they would be doing for the rest of their life, whatever. And all of a sudden now they're furloughed. They're unemployed. And there's 40 million other people that are unemployed as well. So how is that job market going to look? How is that going to look for you all as well? So those are the things. How are you going to separate yourself from the next person? Also this, talk is cheap. Actions speak louder than words. So, throughout the journey, persevere to find out what your passion is. And this might change over time, just like your taste buds would. You might like early on in your career, and all of a sudden, eventually later, you're like, no, I'm going to a trade, So that's what I got. And to leave you off on this, I would say the last thing to ask yourself, what is your purpose? If you could answer that, that'd be really good. Well, what's your purpose in life? That's all I got. So thank you for question and answers.
Mark, thank you so much. I think we have time maybe for one or two questions before we move on to our next speaker. The first one we do want to ask is if you could share with us maybe what does your typical day look like maybe before the pandemic, and how does it look like look like it now during COVID times. Can you describe your work-life balance in your current position?
All right, so right now, yes, it's significantly changed. My job, I do work out of my house, so I have the ability to handle my caseload. So I have cases, and I got to be on the road and go take affidavits and go gather paperwork. Best way to explain our job is we gather information, we gather the truth, we compile it, and we paint the picture. And so for right now, and then that goes on to enforcement. Enforcement then makes the determination of whether or not they're going to then further on, issue a penalty, warning, whatever the situation may be. But for myself, yeah, it's changed. Just like so many, it has. That's where thinking outside the box, being able to utilize systems like what we have right now, whether it be Microsoft Teams, Zoom, having this ability is pretty good. But at the same time, it does hinder us in many ways because for my job, I go out and I talk to people. So for some of us, our investigations have come to more of you might come to a roadblock and you got to try to figure out how do I get past that road. I have had the ability to conduct phone interviews where somebody might be stopped at the border, and then all of a sudden I just say, put them on audio speaker, and we're going to do an interview right now, and then I'll have that other individual then document, and I will also then just create a declaration from our conversation. Take all the notes and everything like that, and basically wrap it all up. So traveling for us is probably the biggest change.
Perfect. Thank you, Mark. Well, thank you for joining us today. I think that we'll only have time for one question.
Okay.
We'll have to turn it back to Ruby, but we greatly appreciate your time and joining us today.
Okay. Thank you very much, Lori.
Thank you, Mark, again. I'd like to introduce our next speaker. Commander Nisha Antoine joined the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Food Safety and Inspection Service in 1995 through the USDA 1890s National Scholars Program. She became an officer in the United States Public Health Service Commission Corps in November of 2007 after 11 years of civil service. Commander Antoine was a staff officer within the Office of Public Health Science for most of her career until 2014. She served as project lead and went on to become team lead of the microbiological analysis and data branch, where she successfully led, managed, and implemented multi-million-dollar funded studies that focused on microbiological pathogens of concern in food products regulated by Food Safety Inspection Service. Currently, Commander Antoine serves as the Program Director for the International Equivalent Staff in the Office of Policy and Program Development. This staff is responsible for ensuring that meat, poultry, and egg products imported into the United States are produced under standards equivalent to the U.S. food safety and standards. She provides leadership in management, ensuring the international equivalent staff apply a science-based equivalence process that aligns with international agreements. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Commander Antoine.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, can everyone see the presentation? The first slide?
Yes, we can see. I think if you want to just do it in presentation view, but we can see your
Got
screen.
it. Okay, thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for that introduction, Ruby, and thank you for the opportunity to present today and tell my story. I hope by the end of my presentation that you will have learned something new or taken away some valuable information that will be helpful to you as you pursue your career goals. So just a little bit about me. I am originally from Chicago, Illinois, born and raised. Growing up, I had very little knowledge about agriculture, and the only thing I associated with was farming. A lot of the times when I talk to other people in the field of agriculture, I'll often hear that they grew up on a farm or their parents, had a job in agriculture. So my experience was very different. What I did know is that I loved science and math. So as I got older and I thought about college, I knew that I was going to pursue a career in either science or maybe in the health field, like a doctor or a nurse. You may be wondering how I did learn about agriculture at some point. And eventually I discovered USDA through the 1890 Scholars Program. I'm not sure how many people on the call are familiar with it, but very quickly, the scholarship program was established over 20 years ago with the goal of increasing the number of minorities studying agriculture, food, natural resource sciences, and other related disciplines. If a student is awarded the scholarship, they agree to attend a 1890 land-grant university, which is how I ended up at the University of Maryland, Eastern Shore in Princess Anne, Maryland. And then, of course, you have to have a major, as I mentioned earlier, in agriculture, science, or another related field. USDA, in turn, pays for the student's tuition, room, and board, and places the student in a permanent position within the department after graduation. So for each year that USDA pays for tuition, the student agrees to work for the department. So through this program, not only do you get a free education, but you have a job immediately upon graduating. For those who are interested in learning more about the Scholars Program, I have included a link to the website. So this slide just gives you a little bit about my educational background. As I mentioned earlier, I attended the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, and I received my Bachelor of Science in Animal Science, Pre-Veterinary Medicine, with a minor in biology. I then went on to receive my Master of Public Health in Epidemiology and Biostatistics from George Washington University. And then in 2012, I earned a master's certificate in Applied Project Management and eventually became certified in project management. So as I was working for USDA, I became the lead on several projects, and I really enjoyed just managing different projects, and I decided that getting my certification would be a really good idea. So good decision I made there. Let's discuss FSIS. So what is FSIS? It is one of 16 agencies within the Department of Agriculture, and it has 14 program areas. And I've been fortunate enough to work in 3 of those program areas throughout my career. So where is FSIS located? We have headquarters offices in Washington, D.C. We have regional and district offices that are in the field all over the country. And within those district offices, we have inspection personnel that are in meat, poultry, and egg establishments that are all over the country. The mission of FSIS is protecting the public's health by ensuring the safety of meat, poultry, and processed egg products. And how does FSIS carry out its mission? FSIS uses science to support the development of its policies. And in turn, those policies enable FSIS to carry out its mission of protecting the public's health through inspection of meat, poultry, and egg product establishments. Inspection is carried out through the in-plant personnel, we call them FSIS inspectors, and also veterinarians, and it involves ensuring that animals are slaughtered humanely, that the carcasses of slaughtered animals are handled in a sanitary manner, that the products from these animals are not adulterated, and that products are properly labeled. So I have been with FSIS for quite some time. I have had a very wonderful career, 25 years. And as I mentioned earlier, I have had the opportunity to work in 3 of the offices within FSIS. I'm going to focus on my experiences within the Office of Public Health Science, and then my current position with the Office of Policy and Program Development. The Office of Public Health Science is responsible for assisting in investigations of national and international outbreaks, monitoring current and emerging foodborne threats, and advising leadership on matters of science to improve policies and programs. My first experience in OPHS was with the microbiology laboratory in Athens, Georgia. There I learned how the labs processed and analyzed food product samples that were taken from establishments, and I learned about aseptic techniques used in laboratory environments. While I was working in this laboratory, my mentor is the one that actually mentioned public health to me. So during my last year of college, I researched and applied to several schools, and I was accepted at the George Washington University School of Public Health. So after graduation in 1999, I moved to DC and I became a biologist on the science staff. In total, I was with OPHS for 16 years, but I had various roles that increased with leadership responsibilities over time, and that was very, very important for me. During this time, I was fortunate enough to work with chemists, microbiologists, statisticians, toxicologists, veterinarians, and also commissioned corps officers, which I will discuss later. OPHS was the leading office for designing, implementing, managing, and reporting data from their FSIS baseline data collection surveys. These studies involve the collection of samples from food products or animals that were analyzed for pathogens such as Salmonella or E. coli. They are important because they help the agency to estimate the levels of specific pathogens that are on or in food products related by FSIS. They provide data for risk assessments and risk-based sampling programs, and the baselines assist with policy and regulatory decisions. I was the project lead on several of these studies from 2005 to 2015, but my most complex and challenging baseline was the beef and veal carcass baseline survey. So on this slide, I'm going to attempt to explain the various parts that went into developing the beef and veal carcass baseline survey. It was my responsibility to coordinate and communicate with several FSIS offices to ensure that team members were working together effectively and tasks were being completed. So this first illustration, I know it's kind of small, but it's a map of the United States. And if you look closely, there are little dots all over the map. And those are showing clusters of beef and veal establishments that were actually included in this particular study. And I worked with OPHS statisticians to develop the sampling plans for the establishments that participated. I collaborated with the Office of Policy to develop sample instructions for the inspectors that were collecting the samples, and a questionnaire to capture information about the sample and practices within the establishments where the samples were being collected. The third picture indicates I coordinated with OPHS, the second picture shows, that's a picture of supplies. So I worked with the OPHS laboratories to determine what supplies were needed for sample collection and to discuss the methods for sample analysis. And for pictures 3 and 4, I met with the training office to develop graphics and photos taken for the sampling instructions. And I was also involved in writing a script for a training video that was published on the FSIS website as well as YouTube. Pictures 5 and 6 indicate how once the study was implemented and the agency began to collect the samples and gather information from the questionnaires, I worked with FSIS statisticians and data analysis and data analysts, in headquarters to review the microdata and assess it for trends. And finally, when sample and data collections were completed, the study design, sampling plan, and results were written in a report and published on the FSIS website. This was a huge undertaking, but I am very proud to say that this project was very successful. So switching gears, I think it's very important to mention my conversion from civil service to the uniformed service in 2007. I learned about the U.S. Public Health Service while I was attending George Washington University, and at the same time, FSIS actually had officers working for the agency. I became more and more interested in the uniformed service as I got closer to completing my master's, and I decided that I would apply. The mission and values of the Corps resonated with me, and FSIS leadership was supportive of my decision. The U.S. Public Health Service Commissioned Corps is a branch of uniformed service that is committed to the service of health. Currently, about 6,000 highly qualified public health professionals are members of this diverse team. Commissioned Corps only has officers, meaning there are no enlisted service members. So you must have a commissionable degree to apply. I do want to be clear that we are not trained in combat like other services. Instead, we have officers that serve in agencies across the government, providing direct health care, public health leadership, and scientific expertise. And they fall within 11 categories, such as physicians, nurses, dentists, veterinarians, scientists, engineers, and other professions. Currently, FSIS is the only USDA agency that hires Commissioned Corps officers. And finally, besides the uniform, what makes us different from civilians is that we are deployable for public health emergencies, which can be international or domestic. And most recently, we have been recognized for our response to COVID-19. My second experience that I want to discuss is my work within the Office of Policy and Program Development, OPPD. OPPD is responsible for recommending and developing all inspection and enforcement related policy for FSIS. They also evaluate labeling and food additives used by the industry. Currently, I serve as the acting director of the International Equivalence Staff, located in Washington, D.C., where I supervise 15 staff members with different backgrounds that include veterinary medicine, microbiology, chemistry, law, and public health. IES is responsible for ensuring that meat, poultry, and egg products imported into the United States are produced under standards that are equivalent to U.S. food safety standards. So just to go a little bit into more detail about equivalence, that is the process by which a country must demonstrate how its procedures meet the U.S. level of protection. There are 4 types of equivalence determinations, which I've listed on the slide. And for every type of determination, there is a 3-step evaluation process. The process includes a thorough documentation review conducted by my staff, IES. The second is an on-site, meaning in-country verification audit conducted by FSIS international auditors. And the third is reinspection of imported products when they arrive to the U.S. This is carried out by our FSIS import inspectors. So the documentation review, like I mentioned on the previous slide, is the first step in the equivalence process, and this is what my staff is responsible for. So when countries request any type of equivalence, they must provide and update responses in a questionnaire called the self-reporting tool. This tool is designed to capture information in an organized fashion and is divided into 6 components that are listed on the slide. Not only are countries required to provide responses to the questions in this tool, but they must also provide documentation such as their country's policies, regulations, and procedures that support their responses. In total, IES reviews documentation that explains how a foreign country's inspection system operates and provides oversight in their establishments. It describes humane handling practices and labeling procedures. The documentation should demonstrate if animals are handled in a sanitary manner and a clean environment. It should describe the country's requirements for controlling food safety hazards. For example, controlling E. coli in raw ground beef. And the documentation should describe the official chemical residue and microbiology testing programs established by the foreign country's government. My main responsibility in all of this is to ensure that my employees are reviewing the information in a consistent manner because we have to treat all of the foreign countries fairly. So I want to close by mentioning that my position within IES was the first time that I have been a supervisor. I started out as a team lead when I came to policy. I initially only had 25% responsibilities as a supervisor, and then I became the deputy director. So being a supervisor has taught me a lot. I've learned what to do right, and I've learned what not to do. While I think that technical knowledge is essential to succeed, and I have had the opportunity to work with some of the brightest individuals in the food safety field, the most important lesson that I will continue to carry with me throughout the remainder of my career is that you must value people. Regardless of your position, you need to learn to be collaborative, you need to listen to people, you need to be empathetic, and you have to have good communication skills. I truly believe that these 4 skills will serve anyone and everyone well as they pursue their career goals. I want to commend Mark for speaking so much to those values. I mean, you were reading my mind. I couldn't have said it better. I actually think you said it better. And so I feel very strongly about that. So I just want to say thank you again for your time and attention. And if you have any questions for me, I am more than happy to take them.
Hey, Nisha, can you hear me?
I can.
Great. We do have a few questions already geared up for you. The first one being, can you talk about any barriers that you've had to overcome, getting to your position and the career path that you've had today?
There's not one particular thing that really pops up in my mind. I have to say that my agency has been extremely supportive of me. Like I mentioned, I came in when I was a college student, and I think that because I had been there for so long, and I think that I showed my commitment to my agency, anything that I pretty much needed and wanted, they were very supportive of me. Like I said, even going from civilian to commission corps, I mean, I've had the opportunity to be in some great leadership programs. So I can't think of anything right now, unfortunately, that that stands out. But I guess what I can say is just being committed, doing what you're supposed to do, being genuine, just like Mark said. It will take you far, and I hope that many of you have the same experience that I did. But if I think of something, I'll definitely try to come back to that question.
Great, thanks. The other question, Mark got the question as well, is can you talk a little bit about your work-life balance and how you balance the pressures of, especially during a pandemic, with family needs and making sure your family are well taken care of?
So this has been challenging for me. Before the pandemic happened, I was commuting into DC every day in my office. And when this happened, quickly everything had to switch. I was working from home full time. My children were home full time. And it was a lot of pressure. Over a period of time, I realized that I had to just take a step back because I was working much longer hours than I would have if I had been in the office. But to me, I get so immersed in what I'm doing and my work, and I want to make sure that it's done well. I could go on and on and on. So I had to really take a step back and start taking better care of myself and taking time out. I actually started exercising more than I had before. I was actually very active before, but it became that increased for me because I had to be able to release some of that stress and kind of just make sure that I took breaks. So I am currently still working from home, but the situation is much better. And even not having a pandemic, you have to be able to prioritize what is important to you. My family is important to me. So there were times that I probably wasn't doing what I was supposed to do. And again, I just had to take a step back and regroup and rethink about what I wanted. And then I acted on that. So I hope that's helpful.
It is. We got a little bit more a technical question about the equivalence process and how long that overall process takes.
Wow, that's a good question. So when I first started, we did take an assessment of that process. So if a country is asking for initial equivalence, so that means they've never shipped any products to us before, and this will be the first time. We realized that it was taking about an average of 7 years, because first there is the request, and then you send the countries this questionnaire that we're asking. And although the questionnaire right now is 35 questions, when I first came on board, that questionnaire was 200 questions. So one of the first things that we did on my staff is that we cut that down significantly, because we needed to make sure we were focusing on food safety objectives, not just needling down to every little detail. So over time, that process has shortened. I think we've shaved off maybe 2 to 3 years in that process, and I've seen it move very quickly. But it does take time, because countries have to provide us with a great deal of information, and then there's time that needs to be taken for it to be assessed, and then there's a lot of back and forth. If they're not clear about something, we have to go back and ask more clarifying questions, and then there's responses that come to us and back and forth. So it's never just a one and done. So that process is it takes quite a few years. And then there's the audit, which I mentioned, that has to take place. And if they come back with findings from that audit, we may have to go back 1, 2, maybe more times, until we're comfortable knowing that they're implementing their system the way that it's described on paper. And then once that audit is complete, it goes through a process. It used to go through a rulemaking process that's recently changed. Now we're just announcing that information in a Federal Register notice, and the public is allowed to comment on that. And then once comments are considered and everything is final, then the country is officially allowed to start shipping products. So it's quite an extensive process.
Wow. Thank you for making a really complicated subject a little bit easier to understand. I'm going to combine our next couple of questions just for the sake of time. And one, it was specifically, are you from Chicago, and did you attend the Chicago High School for Agricultural Sciences? And then the other was about how do you get your foot in the door in FSIS or other government agencies that you worked for. So you've touched a little bit about kind of getting your foot in the door and how you did it, but do you have any recommendations on how to get your foot in the door, get that first experience, and how to kind of capitalize on that, as well as specifically, did you go to Chaz?
Sure. Yes, originally from Chicago. I did not go to Chaz. Actually, one of my siblings did. She loved it. I actually went to Whitney Young Magnet High School. And like I said, I learned about agriculture through that 1890 Scholars Program. But for those who may not be interested in pursuing that route, most government agencies have a pathways program where they have internship and externship opportunities for students. There are some requirements around them, but I would definitely say take advantage of that. There are so many people that have come through that program and they wind up getting converted to permanent employees. So I think the earlier you start, the easier it is, because you have adults trying to get in, my age, or maybe a little younger, maybe even older, and it's just very difficult. So I'd say the earlier, the better. And while you're in school, take advantage of one of those internship or externship opportunities. And that's anywhere in the government, not just USDA.
Thank you for that, and great plug for Pathways programs. It's a great way to get your foot in the door and convert. So we have about 2 minutes left, so I do want to be respectful of everybody's time. And maybe Nisha or even Mark, do you have any parting words of wisdom or anything that you just got to get off your chest?
I'll let Mark go. I've been talking a lot.
Nisha tapped on about as far as the Pathways program. So yes, that is definitely a good way for y'all at such an early age to get involved into the government, because I personally know of somebody that I worked with over at HUD, at Department of Housing and Urban Development. Their daughter started in high school, and when they ended up graduating from college, they had already had, I don't know, I think they started when they were 16 or 17 doing a certain program. I don't know what it was, but by the time they got out, they graduated from college and they already had all these years of experience, because they continuously did that during the summers and in the Christmas time period. And they just already set up themselves up for success. And the Pathways program, it's a great way to go about it. That's the Pathways, just like Nisha said, you have the opportunity to go and work through it as an as basically an apprentice or internship, externship, and you could then become converted into a permanent employee. And that's what the program that I was in. So the Pathways program is for bachelor's, and then the Presidential Management Fellowship, that's for if you have a master's. And you have, for us, it was a 2-year program versus the Pathways, which was a 1-year program. But if you have the ability to do that, apply, and if you get selected, it's a great program. Either of the programs, I mean, they definitely are good, because like it's competitive out there. So yeah.
Well, thank you both. So with those remarks, that concludes the July session of the Faces of Agriculture and USDA Speaker Series. We want to extend a thanks to all of our presenters and attendees for taking the time to learn and grow with us today. We invite all of our attendees to visit the USDA Youth and Agriculture website at usda.gov/youth to learn more about the opportunities to engage and empower the next generation of agriculture. With that, thanks, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you.